to another episode of the Young Terps podcast, basketball post-game pod. Terps top Illinois, 76-67. Ahmed, finally see it. The Terps get it done on the road against the number 10 team in the country. Let's start off. Instant takes.
Yeah, obviously a huge win. I think Maryland kind of going into this game needed it to be a must-win game, and that was kind of what Kevin Willard said going into and coming out of the Michigan game last week. And I think Maryland obviously picks up that huge signature win. You can kind of question, if Maryland was the better team for a 40-minute stretch. I think that second half against Michigan was the best that Maryland has played so far this year, and I think this game is probably the best 60 minutes stretch between that second half that Maryland's done this year. And I think Maryland's starting to show some better signs that they're able to kind of put it together. But nonetheless, that first signature win for Kevin Willard in what's been a trying year two so far.
Yeah, it certainly has. And this one came from the contributions from the supporting cast. And they weren't huge, but they were certainly at marquee times in the game. Noah Batchelor with a big three. Caleb Swanton Roger enters the score sheet with his 2-point basket from Jameer Young, which felt like a big moment for the Terps in the game. They also get 5 from Deshaun Harris-Smith, including a huge three-pointer and a forced foul, even though he doesn't knock down either of the free throws. Jahari Long comes back off the injury, gives them 3 good minutes. Jamie Kaiser, while at rough at times on the defensive end, was able to eat up some minutes in there. So overall, the team steps up. But what I have to point out, Jordan Geronimo's 9 points, Dante Scott's 9 points, and then obviously Juju Reese, who's had some really, really tough games here in year two, gets it done big time for the Terps in the middle and absolutely dominates the game.
Yeah, and I think fans kind of know what to expect. I think from Jameer Young is just being that alpha dog in the backcourt. But I think this was a really big performance from Julian Reese, especially kind of what we saw against Purdue. Obviously Zach Edey is no easy assignment for any big man in the country, but coming out of that, Kevin Willard noted Julian Reese needs to be alert that he's going to be number one on opposing team scouting reports, and this was really that next step that next test for him to really step up, and obviously being able to finish with 20 points, shooting 50% from the field there, knocked 4 from 7 down from the free throw line. That's really big. But you also mentioned Jordan Geronimo, and I think Jordan Geronimo had obviously 9 points, but that triple that he had at the 12-minute mark to put Maryland up 52-48, that was really big shot there as well. And I think it was a big shot just in terms of game momentum, but in terms of for Geronimo as well, going in, the perimeters really scoring outside the paint was kind of considered a weakness or, work in progress for him. That's an area that he's put a lot of time in and worked to really establish confidence going into the season. So I thought between Julian Reese really stepping up and living up to expectations or what was needed from him in order for Maryland to put this type of performance together, and Jordan Geronimo knocking down that crucial shot there midway through the second half, I thought both of those were nice takeaways. But can't talk about too much without talking about that Jameer Young block with about 2.5 minutes left in the game there.
Yeah, that play was huge. And, talking about just game feels before we dive into the stat sheet a little bit more, just finally felt like watching this team so much this year. It's been so frustrating at times because they'll have a couple good plays and then they'll miss or throw the ball away or have an awful turnover. And then they won't score for 5 minutes after. They won't have another field goal. Maybe they knock down like a free throw split a 1-and-1 or find a way to have one of their better free throw shooters go to the line and they split instead of making them both. And you just kind of find yourself, smacking yourself watching this team so many times. And today there were plenty of times where that could have happened, where the table could have flipped on Maryland, but they just found a way to get baskets inside. And a lot of those were those floaters from Jameer Young, which, reminded me of what, Eric Hayes and Gravis Vasquez used to do when they got in the lane and Jordan Williams would dive low and they would be able just to throw up those little floaters on the inside. Illinois game plan wise, I mean, Brad Underwood cannot beat Maryland. He just cannot figure out how to beat Maryland. And it just showed. The game plan from Illinois, I thought was bad. And I know that Cooper Hawkins is a really, really talented big man. He can guard all over the court. He can shoot threes. He's a do-it-all guy, but seeing him lose Reese as an assignment, get into foul trouble, not be nearly as effective. Juju Reese beat him up throughout this game. And
Yeah.
I would have liked to see, I'm sure if Brad Underwood could play it back, Gainja would have played more in the game just because he's a little bit tougher on the inside. But to see Maryland be able to execute their game plan at a high level, I was just looking at the stat sheet, taking a second look at it. The turnovers very limited in this game for Maryland, especially from Deshaun Harris Smith. There weren't any moments where he, kind of lost himself on the court. Much better between the second half earlier in the week to this entire game, even though they'd started off a little bit slow for Maryland. You can just feel it having watched this team that they finally look ready to play with each other. They look like they've bought into the idea that I'm going to assume has been sold to them by the coaching staff that's saying, hey, we've got to score 40 to 55 points in the paint if we want to win. That's just it. We can't shoot. So we'll take wide open shots because we got to take them. We're going to have to make our share of them, which I guess 4 threes is their share of them when they need to win. But um, that's how it's got to come for this team.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head. I think Illinois at times, especially offensively in the second half, they really looked out of sorts, and it really felt like Maryland. At times they've looked like that through the season, but it didn't feel like that on Sunday afternoon. I think that kind of, I think the first half, obviously Illinois was able to go in with a slight lead there, but really just felt like Maryland was talent wise, you really couldn't tell that one team was kind of struggling and another team was 10th in the country. It felt like Maryland, especially in the second half, proved it to be the better team that day.
Yeah, Ahmed, let's dive into the team stats on this one. The Terps shoot the ball much better, 30 for 65 from the floor compared to Illinois, who has a really, really poor shooting day. In the end, shoots at 21 for 64. The Terps, 46% from the floor. I already mentioned Maryland, 4 for 17 from three. Illinois knocks down 6 of 22 from the 3 point line, most of those coming early in the game. And then the telling stat for me in this one, when it looks at it, the Terps, 12 for 17 from the line. They only make it there 17 times. Illinois, 19 for 24. The Illini get that home court advantage you see so much in the Big Ten, where they shoot, where they make more free throws than the Terps attempt. Rebounding fairly even in the game. The Terps really scrappy down low on the offensive boards. They finally get into double digits on there. And then the stat that every coach loves to see, the Terps, they pick up the lead mid-second half right around the 16-minute mark. They do not surrender the lead again in the game. And then the largest margin for either team in this one, the Terps winning it by the final score of 76 to 67. Ahmed, a lot of good things to point to for Maryland, who, as we just keep saying, just played a much better game.
Yeah, and I think, for a Maryland team that's really struggled to shoot the basketball from deep, and obviously, finishing 4 from 17 from deep today, we talked about, Maryland doing a better job of being able to take care of the basketball and finishing the game with 7 turnovers there. I think that provides exact credence. And then with obviously 7 turnovers, 14 assists, exactly what you want to see there. But I think, you look at the stats and the 52 to 26 points in the paint for a Maryland advantage. Again, for a Maryland team that doesn't do a good job of finding perimeter offense. They did a really good job. And again, credit to Julian Reese, but finding that production inside. And I think that was, the clear difference. And then obviously, like you said, Maryland being able to generate some of those key second chance opportunities there, even though the Illini came away with outscored Maryland 16-8 in that department. Maryland came up with some timely offensive rebounds in the second half there to give themselves a couple of opportunities. But again, I thought Maryland just for the turnover problems that Maryland had saw the first half of the season. And again, even against the lesser opponents, Maryland struggled, finished with 15, 16 turnovers a game to finish with 7 turnovers on the road against the number 10 team. I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, and you have to say Illinois at the same time. They had a Maryland-esque shooting second half. 1 for 14 from three in the second half is what Illinois ends up shooting in that. And in that same stretch, credit to Maryland, and Robbie Hummel kept saying this on the broadcast too. Just don't take threes. 2 for 5 is perfectly fine for this team. If they shoot, somewhere between that, let's just say 4 for 10 to 4 for 13 from three, I think that that's where this team needs to live. And obviously, they're going to have games like the one last week where they need to come back and they have to hit a couple more of those shots. But Maryland stuck to the game plan. They obviously, and Kevin Willard said it in his post game with Robbie Hummel. They saw something. They identified something with the way that Illinois was guarding, and a lot of those little switch screens where Juju Reese pump fakes the dribble, then goes to drive and gets a little ticky tack foul on him, where a guy's just waiting for him to either spin back or roll back into him. Like the game planning, the identifying of what Illinois was able to do from Willard and staff, very impressive in this game. And then obviously just Maryland's players keeping their heads on their shoulders even when it didn't go well early, and being able to just continue to execute the game plan and not fall out of that and play team basketball.
Yeah, and I think again it goes back to what we've kind of talked about, just kind of going into the Big Ten play. Can the supporting cast really step up? And stat wise, obviously Jameer Young, Julian Reese combined for 48 points there. But again, you talk about Jashon Harris-Smith, what he was able to do defensively a little bit. Jamie Kaiser, again, I think a lot of people looked at him, and obviously the 3-point shot has been hit or miss, but him finishing with 6 rebounds there helped Maryland obviously be able to finish tied with Illinois at 41 rebounds there. But again, I thought, we talked about what Jordan Geronimo was able to do with that timely 3-point shot as well. So just felt like as a whole, a lot of these pieces really started to click together. And again, what a time for it to really all come together and kind of capitalize on, like you said, a poor shooting performance for Illinois down the stretch there. Obviously shooting, I believe it was 5 of 8 from three in the first half, and then finishing 1 for 14 in the second half. So, hey, I don't think any Maryland fan is going to feel any sympathy for hearing those numbers for any other team.
No, a couple more things to get to, and you just mentioned it. What a time for the Terps to finally figure out a quad one or quad two win. They pick up their first top end of the tournament resume win with this win over Illinois. To this point, Maryland 0-2 against the quad one. The loss to Villanova earlier the year and the loss to Purdue at home. Terps, plenty of opportunity coming up, and that will start on Wednesday. Maryland will get a quad one opportunity against Northwestern, so a chance to stack some quad one wins as they return home on Sunday to Michigan State, who's also found themselves into the top quad of college basketball. And then if you want to keep going, Iowa also a quad one opportunity for Maryland. So the Terps, chance to stack some tournament resume building wins, find themselves back into that fight as we get into late January, early February already.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think yeah, I think this Northwestern game on Wednesday, I think that's kind of the end of that 3 game stretch. Just because coming out of that Purdue game, I think just kind of the way that the way that game went, obviously, and looking at the time, that first chance at a signature win, and you kind of looked at the next three and said, Maryland definitely needed at least two. If they can get three, that's definitely a season turnaround. If they get only one, and with it being potentially only Michigan, that's not enough. So obviously Maryland did what they needed to do in the second half to take care of Michigan there, to take care of Illinois on the road is a huge one. If Maryland's able to find a way on Wednesday night at Northwestern and have to contain what, sixth or seventh year Boo Buie at this point, but again, that'll be a big one and get a chance to return to Xfinity, where fan attendance has been a little bit lackluster. But again, I think maybe this win will help provide a little bit of jolt in at that atmosphere. But if Maryland gets the next one, watch out. Xfinity could be a fun ticket the rest of the way.
Yeah, it certainly could be. You got to find a way to stack those quad one wins. Obviously, Michigan, they have the brand name, but for Maryland, they're in that quad three category where the Terps haven't been great either this year. So you got to win the games that are in front of you. You have to still be thinking long term that magic number is somewhere between 11 and 13 wins in the conference at this point. You're 3 and
Yeah.
3 as of right now, which means you have to finish out this last, I guess what's really now almost 2 months still left in the season, but we'll call it month and a half for the purpose of the show. They have to finish out strong, and that really starts on Wednesday. And you mentioned it, sixth year guy, Bowie, one of the best in the conference. He's right up there with Jameer Young. And look, maybe him and Dante Scott will talk about getting dropped from their first year consulting firm jobs at their age. Like that's where everybody else would be, but they're still playing college basketball and stacking NIL money. So can't blame them for that.
That's definitely true. That's definitely true. But I think a lot of fans just are excited and welcome the rejuvenating and glass half full feeling going into Wednesday. So we shall see how Willard and Co fare.
Yeah, opportunity is certainly something that we weren't sure we would still have at this point in the season. So, got to take it where you can get it, and a win over the number 10 team in the country on the road is a good place to start. Ahmed, anything else to add?
No, it should be an interesting one. Obviously, stay locked in on the site, and we'll have plenty of recruiting rumblings and more. So stay tuned.
Yeah, make sure to subscribe over on InsideTheBlackAndGold.net. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get it. Give it a thumbs up and a rating. It really helps us out here. And as always, for Ahmed Gafir and Mason Viner, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.